Hey TMFG community, Carlo Cansino here with John Iaconetti. And in today's Ask TMFG episode, we'll be discussing budgeting. Why do we do it? Why is it necessary? How do you do it? Where do you start? Those questions will get answered in today's episode. If you do like our content, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, provide us with a comment, or give us a like. In today's episode, we'll be discussing why it's important to budget. As financial planners, we would need to understand where your money's going. If we've got a plan in place, we need to be able to hit targets for saving, investing, so that you can retire successfully. John, why don't you get us started?
Perfect. Thank you, Carlo. So just like you mentioned, budgeting has become a pretty important topic of conversation with a lot of our meetings, with a lot of our clients. And rightfully so. It's kind of the backbone of just getting you started in terms of saving and getting you started in terms of thinking about your retirement. But we know it's difficult to get started with creating a budget. So hopefully we can come and piece together some ideas for you in this video to hopefully encourage you to get started with your budget. I'll get us started primarily with why it is important to create that budget. And really it's to focus on identifying where there's opportunities to save on your day-to-day or month-to-month expenses. Typically when we start thinking about the budget, we're starting to think about how much can you be setting aside per month or per paycheck towards savings, what goes towards fixed expenses, and what's left over for variable or for fun expenses. Now there are general rule of thumbs around this. You can probably see anything online, 20% in savings, 50% in fixed expenses, 30% in variable. As a rule of thumb, that works great, but we know in life things are a little bit different, so it is going to have to be adjusted accordingly based on your current situations, but we'll use that as a general rule of thumb. Ideally, you've heard it from us before, we do want to get towards 20% of your gross pay going towards savings. That leaves us with that amount to go towards the rest, which would be your expenses that you have on a day-to-day basis. Now, the difficulty is, before you create your budget, you really don't know where your money's going. And we've talked about it before where you do a self-analysis to figure out, we may have these automatic charges that are coming off on your credit card statement, or just stuck in the routine of, Uber Eats or going out to dinner or things like that. So therefore expenses can get a little bit out of hand. So that's why we recommend put pen to paper, use an app, something like that to at least start to identify where your money is going.
John, I find it really easy to do an annual review of what expenses have happened. And bank apps or bank websites and your credit card statements are typically very good about having digital copies of your expenses, easily downloadable into any app that can categorize what your expenses are. Ideally, get into a spreadsheet, identify the different categories of your expenses. Is there overlap? Are there ways that you can eliminate expenses that you're duplicating that you wouldn't even know about? John, you talked about subscriptions. How many streaming services do you have? You have Netflix.
Too many.
You have Amazon Prime, Disney Plus. How many different places do we need to go to watch the Goonies? We only need one. So it's very simple, but a very tedious exercise to walk through. But if it means savings hundreds to thousands of dollars a year, that can go towards that 20% that you talked about earlier. Increasing your net worth, whether that's increasing your investing or increasing your debt management.
Those are all excellent points, Carlo. And from my own personal perspective, I've talked about it previously with other clients. I'm a big believer in the apps, at least to get yourself up to speed or get a good understanding overall of your financial situation. I used previously before Mint, which unfortunately is no longer in use, but there's also new ones out there called You Need a Budget, YNAB. There's a bunch of other ones out there as well. I don't use that on a regular month-to-month basis. I've used that to kind of get a good grasp, maybe for a month or two or three, just to get an understanding of where my expenses are going. Now going forward, it's something I just regularly keep track of through, TD has a TD My Spend where I track my expenses through TD My Spend. Primarily, credit cards, debit cards are all through TD, so it makes it a little bit easier for myself. But just doing that check and balance, I know roughly how much goes to whatever it may be, rent, groceries, what have you. I keep track of that and I have a rough estimate there, and I know I have a certain number in terms of savings that I need to hit. If I'm hitting that savings number, I can pretty much spend the rest guilt-free, knowing that I'm doing what I'm supposed to and I'm hitting that savings. How about yourself? What do you and your wife do?
Yeah, Johnny, I am a student of the Wealthy Barber, and I'm not trying to date myself, but paying yourself first. That is such an easy way to get the savings done and you no longer have to think about it. To your point, get the savings done and then spend guilt-free. So we talked about working backwards. You know, ideally you're investing because you want to eventually retire and have your money provide you with that income as opposed to you working for income. So you designate a date of retirement. So we've decided when we want to retire, determined all of our income sources, and we have a number that we need to have at that point in order to retire comfortably. So we need to be putting away a certain amount, whether it's 15 to 20%, to be able to get to that goal. Once your savings and fixed expenses are looked after, you'll have the rest for variable expenses. And maybe you're not using all of it for variable expenses, but what's the most important is getting the savings and fixed expenses taken care of.
Absolutely. So hopefully you learned a little bit today in this video regarding budgeting. Like I said, I know it is more of the painful process for a lot of our clients to complete, but it probably is the most important one because we can't really know where you're going to be, in 40 years from now when you're ready to retire if you don't have a good grasp on where you are today in terms of where your money's going. So let us know down in the comment section below as well. What apps are you using? How are you keeping track on your monthly expenses and on your budget? As always, we do enjoy doing these videos for you. So if you can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, it's greatly appreciated. But until next time, I'm Iaconetti.
I'm Carlo Cansino.
And this has been
Ask TMFG.